Introducing Texas Pecan Gourmet Coffee from Monkey Werx. Start your mornings the right way with a handcrafted blend that captures the heart of Texas with every sip. This medium roast delights with tasting notes of rich pecan and smooth cocoa. Our coffee provides a comforting experience perfect for any time of the day. This small batch slow roasted coffee is a testament to quality and Texan craftsmanship. Order yours today and savor the authentic taste of Texas. Visit monkeywerxus.com.
All right. Hey, welcome, folks. It's going to be your Sitrep. It's 4/20/2025, coming to you live here from the Monkey Lounge in the great state of Texas. And today we're going to be talking about the Sentient World Simulator. It's pretty complex, and it's not the first time we've probably heard about this. It was mentioned about 7 years ago, but it is up and running. And we're going to go into some of the details as to what exactly that thing does and what it entails. And how it impacts us in the United States and the world, for that matter. And, of course, we're going to kick it around. We're going to look at all the military stuff that is up. We're going to talk about what's going on, everything from over in China. We've got a lot of military exercises all the way over to what is happening in the Middle East. And then, of course, we'll talk a little bit about Ukraine, because it certainly looks like Trump is about to pull the whole plug on everything that he has done in terms of the efforts for peace between Russia and Ukraine. So we'll get eyes on that. We've got currently sitting, let me take us over here to Skyglass, sitting at around 250 aircraft on screen. That's over the North American continent. And then let's see, we've stripped out almost 200 trainers out of that equation as well. So let's start to kind of peel this back a little bit and see what is really up there in the skies. We'll start out, the KC-135s are sitting at 27 on screen, so one is abroad. Let me add that to my watch list. And then let me drop down a little further and see if we've got any of the 767-200s. Brings us to a total of 36, so that's about 11 high off our baseline. All right, baseline's 25. So what that indicates is that we've got a fair amount of fighter activity up over the United States. And so let's back out of that. We'll look at the tanker activity here in just a second. In fact, let's just go ahead and do that. I'm going to show you what has been happening over the last 5 days since the last time we checked in. And you will notice a little bit of activity over Japan. And we're going to, like I said, we'll talk more about that here shortly. Middle East, you can see some strands running in. Now, notice that you can see, looks like something has come into the Mediterranean, some stuff down into Africa, some things across Europe. But then you can see what's going on across the drink, which is a pretty good indicator we've moved more fighters over to the Middle East. And then, the U.S. is looking about normal over a 5-day span. A little bit of activity over the Gulf of America and then up the eastern seaboard. All right. Now, that's going to just be your air refuelers. Again, it's just a good indicator on how much fighter activity has been happening. The key takeaway to that is just the fact that you see all of those lines going across the Atlantic. That's because we're moving more fighters across the drink. All right. Okay, H-60 is a little light this morning. 24 H-60 Blackhawks up. Now, the key to all of this is just notice that there is nothing really in the panhandle. That's usually where we see a lot of our trainers. So this activity up here is more than likely associated with things like ICE or Homeland Security, etc. All right. Now, let me do this. Let's gonna just start peeling this back. We're going to start off in the intel community. And you'll see pretty active around South Korea. Dropping down to Australia, and you'll see just headed north of Perth and back. And then we got a little bit of the usual over kind of Gaza Strip. Some look like pretty heavy traffic over the Mediterranean up into Europe towards the Baltic Sea, around Kaliningrad as always. It's the same spot they're always looking. Now, remember, this doesn't necessarily mean that what you're seeing on screen is U.S. assets. All right. They could be doing, it's a third party. They could be doing it for NATO or anybody. So, all right, you'll see a little bit of a blip there, dropping down to what looks to be Puerto Rico, some activity up over the northeast. And then just notice that little box that just kind of goes out around the mountains. Again, intelligence gathering. Our government is on steroids when it comes to just digging into everything and everyone. And so you could see along the southern border there was pretty active as well. Now we start talking drones, and you will notice there's some little pockets of drones. You see some stuff coming out of Okinawa towards Japan or vice versa. And then notice you got that little stuff right kind of over where all the ships are. Then out south of Taiwan, a little pocket there in kind of the Malaysia side of the house, where you can see them looking very closely at the border into China. Don't see anything in Australia. All right, and then you get over, Turkey seems to be the heaviest spot. These are going to be low altitude drones, kind of around Istanbul, more than likely looking at all that ship traffic that's coming in to the Black Sea from the Mediterranean. And then, of course, that little blip there coming out of Malta. And then you see these long transitions back across the U.S. That's a recon flight, folks. They are gathering intelligence, as always, across and then the southern flank, but and a little bit near Dothan, Alabama. But that right there is going to be your drone activity. Now, we jump on over here to the sub-hunters, and you'll notice a little bit there off Japan. Right? And the reason we're looking so closely at everything in Japan right now and down south into Southeast Asia and Australia is because we're trying to establish our baseline. We already know we've got 250,000 plus troops in the region. You notice what's missing here? Like nothing out over Europe in 5 days of sub-hunters. Pretty unusual. And then also we normally get a big flurry right here coming out of Jacksonville Naval Air Station. For 5 days, that thing should look like a Sprite, just firework coming out. And there's nothing. Very unusual there. And then you'll see them headed up to the northern end of Michigan and looks to be kind of over towards the Minnesota side of the house. So, all right, let's talk R-135s. Signal intelligence. You'll see this one just kind of get airborne and then go disappear, just ghost us. Coming out of Okinawa. And then we jump over here to Europe, and you'll see there's one transitioning out of the UK, and then it goes dark when it gets over Saudi, right? You can see it just kind of transitioning down, probably going to Bahrain if I was a betting man. But that signal intelligence, the fact we put that in the area is a little interesting. And then this little box, just kind of the little fly around box here. All right, a little further north as always. And then that area right here, we'll talk about some news that was happening just recently out of the Colorado area as well. And then you can see that one headed, looks like MacDill. Right. Now, this is going to be your nuke sniffer. And the key takeaway is just the fact that these things are up and they're moving about quite a bit. You can see this little bit of activity here just around the center of the U.S. All right. So it has been active, more active as of late. And then, of course, we've got them airborne as we speak. Let me just peel this back a little bit, and I'm going to show you where this aircraft is located. Let me grab that one right here. That should be. Maybe it's not. If it's not, oh no, it's dark. Okay. Well, let me see if there is. Here it is right there. Okay. This is going to be one of your nuke sniffer Constant Phoenix R-135. All right. So we showed you a little while ago, just kind of out here over the meat, heart of the plate, so to speak. And then you notice here, it just kind of wraps around and it's doing a little zigzag yet again as it heads down south. So this is actually looking for any type of stuff that shouldn't be there from a nuclear perspective. All right, radiation, anything tied to nukes. All right, so you can see that one is up and about. Let me take that away. All right. So now that takes us on over here to the AWACS. Now, this piece is kind of interesting when you start talking AWACS because I will tell you, for 5 days worth of AWACS, that is pretty scarce. Not a lot out there. You'll see a little bit of activity over France, nothing over Europe. In 5 days, I find that so hard to believe. What I'm noticing is that all of the activity that we would typically see out over Europe seems to have been kind of gone dark. There may be an explanation to that when we get over to what's going on with NATO and Ukraine. So, and just notice kind of just over the eastern side of the U.S., a little bit down south. All right. Okay. Now, let's talk, let me go C-17s because this, you'll see, not super crazy busy out of Japan for 5 days worth, nothing down under, but we're going to look closer at Australia here in just a minute. All right. And then notice the flurry of activity out of the northern side of India up towards, actually up towards the Chinese border, right, into the mountains. That is more than likely not U.S. assets. But that one right there, you see that one headed down into kind of Somalia. Look how thick in 5 days, look how thick the traffic is going into the Middle East. We are, I'm telling you, I don't think the Iran thing's going to go the way everybody thinks it's going to go. I don't think we're going to get peace out of that. I do think we may actually see some type of a limited strike capability that scatters them. So we'll see what happens there. But nonetheless, it's a data point for you. When you see all of those trace lines going across the drink, whether it's the air refuelers or the C-17s, very good indicator we are continuing to push things in droves. All right. Okay. Now let's do this. I'm going to take us on over here to our stories and the news, the latest and greatest. Let me kick this up to the side real fast too before we do that, because one thing I did want to show you on our main screen is notice the amount of intelligence balloons over the U.S. right now. 7, I think, was the number. There's one here, right? So they are in abundance, in abundance. So the upper skies, you start talking 60, 80, 90,000 feet up, they are gathering all kinds of information, right? And then, of course, you see how we show you all of the ISR activity, right? Intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. Like I said, it's on steroids. They are very, very active over the U.S. and around the world. And what that does is just tell us that they got eyes on everything, all right? So, all right, let's move on over here to this. Okay, we got a roll call for today when it comes to Trump at the White House. Looks like we've just got regular, everyday stuff, nothing over the top. There's a swearing-in ceremony for the chairman of the SEC. That's coming into play. But that's pretty much it. Now, let me take you over to this little nugget. It's actually pretty good. Davos gathering founder Klaus Schwab quits as the World Economic Forum chair. I'm sure he's going to still be advising people what to do, but it looks like he is stepping down. He's 88 years old now, or 87 here with this, but following my recent announcement, and as I enter my 88th year, I've decided to step down from the position of chair and as a member of the board of trustees with immediate effect. So just don't lose sight of it, because he's got people that are going to fill that void very quickly, and they're probably more aggressive than he is, right? Which sounds hard to believe, doesn't it? Okay, have you heard of this Sentient World Simulation, SWS? It's a tool to test psyops and control people's minds. And by controlling people's minds, what they're doing is basically messing around with this little simulation world that, I say little, probably has and contains about 2/3 of the world. There's about 1/3 of the world actually doesn't have a social or a digital footprint, so to speak. And but everybody else, they basically have a belly button for you, okay? So if you want to know what it's all about, this is DARPA basically, working stuff in labs. We see them do time and time again all of these simulations about how, What would Spanish flu spread like today? What's that environment look like with air travel, et cetera? And they just basically go through all these different straw men in terms of, probable outcomes, et cetera. But if you're wondering what all this can actually do, this is where it gets interesting. There is actually a digital footprint for every person on Earth, and it uses data collected from their online activities to create a predictive model for each person's behavior. So that's you, that's me, right? Social media influencers, the news media, whatever it may be, they are basically pulling all of that data in, and then they basically start to do what ifs, all right? And the what ifs can range from a multitude of different things, okay? So, for example, civil unrest and social behavior, right? How different populations might respond to a political coup, economic collapse, racial or religious tensions, and disinformation campaigns, right? Now, other piece, pandemic, epidemic response, testing global reactions of an outbreak or disease, modeling the panic, the compliance, vaccine uptake, and mobility. Think about that, compliance, right? Basically, you're going to wear a mask and do it. How many people actually go, I'm not doing it? How many people will tell them, I'm not taking the VOOP? So they model it all, right? And so other thing, economic crisis scenario, right? The effects of trade collapse, inflation, currency resets, tariffs, right? Public trust in financial systems, supply chain disruptions, and hoarding behavior. Then they go into MilOps and psychological influence, predicting how enemy, neutral, and allied populations might respond to invasion or regime change, sanctions or propaganda, narrative shifts across media platforms, and that's all of them. All right, and then natural disaster and climate events, right? What happens? You get these massive earthquakes, food or water shortages, political manipulation and social media. So modeling public sentiment manipulation, right? Testing how memes, trends, influencer content affect public belief, mood, and action, all right? And so kind of crazy when you think about it, but what that tells you is as they do all these what ifs, they will start to do real models, right? They'll start to push out real things into the real world so they can baseline it and bounce it against what the computer simulator told us would happen. And then they know, all right, is it what's the probability of this stuff happening and how accurate is the SWS when it comes to the real world? So stay frosty, folks, because as I mentioned, DARPA, they are the ones that created, all of the mass surveillance tools that are out there, and that is a DoD product. And that's everything from your DNA mapping and structure to all your social media, et cetera, right? Anything you do, everything you buy, everywhere you go, what time you wake up, what time you go to bed, all of it, all right? Okay, now, moving on, because it just gets more and more interesting. So just notice we've got military exercises all over the place. I'm going to show you more and more of that as you get into this region. There's a lot of chest pounding. Even Australia down here is going through a lot of exercises. In fact, let me just show you. I've taken, this is the Japan military in its entirety, no trainers, all right? And you can just see how they've been reacting over the last 5 days. And you'll notice a lot of activity up to the north, a lot of stuff down south, and then they kind of spread their wings a little and head further down south into Okinawa, et cetera. So they haven't really gone too far down like the Philippines, et cetera, but they're absolutely in the middle or the midst of an exercise with the United States. Right? Now, look at Australia. Now, the reason we're watching these is because if China becomes a huge threat in the region, you're going to see a lot of movement because our frontline countries, besides the United States, is going to be Australia, probably, the Philippines, and then Japan. And so we're going to keep a close eye on them because we want to see what they start to do and how they start to react in our own little simulator type of environment, right? Even though this isn't simulation, this is real data. So notice, too, Australians, how they jump into the Middle East. You see them going into Bahrain. You see them all the way up to the northern end of England. And then you'll notice, too, they come into what looks to be China Lake. All right. Yeah, right down there. Very close to China Lake, at least, maybe. Area 51, somewhere out there in that desert, okay? So now it gives you kind of the back of the napkin of what the Australians are up to, what the Japanese are up to, and we'll continue to monitor it. And if I see something where we go, oh, we got a big spike in activity, we'll be able to look at it closer, all right? Now, over here to the U.S., you'll just notice we still have these boxes, danger boxes, out here in the Gulf of Mexico, right? That's where we're seeing a lot of the intelligence gathering over the last, week and a half. Up the eastern seaboard, out off Cape Canaveral, and then we get over here to Europe, and you'll notice we've got some stuff here just to kind of that upper corner there between Spain and Portugal. And then other boxes that are also exercise boxes. You'll see these here. These are basically danger areas by the Ruskies. And then this looks to be, let's see, I think this is some type of a military exercise right there. Okay, moving on. Now, the U.S. depended on China for key drone components. Now, this is, I think that's a DJI, probably a Mavic or something. But we use a ton of Chinese parts when it comes to drones. Kind of crazy when you think about what exactly it is that we're getting from them for our drone parts. For example, Pentagon continues to permit the use of certain Chinese-made drone parts, including airframes and batteries in our military systems. Yeah, they get everything from them. You're talking engines to just take a look at this. As the Pentagon accelerates drone production to prepare for potential conflict in the Indo-Pacific, that would be against China, critical parts such as batteries, gliders, engines, radios, and cameras are still being sourced from China. It says China actually controls around 90% of the global drone market. That's really not good. Okay. I don't know if you saw this one, but this is pretty interesting. China tests a hydrogen-based bomb generating white-hot fireball of 1,000 degrees Celsius. That's pretty doggone hot. But it is basically a magnesium hydride-powered device producing an extended blast of heat in a controlled test without using nuclear materials. As you can see, looks pretty impressive. But this is actually a nuclear bomb on the screen. So I don't know that it's that big, but this one here is the first American nuclear bomb detonated in 1945 at the Trinity site in New Mexico. Now, theirs isn't quite as big as that, but this is kind of a new capability that's coming out there that they're going to use heat to basically melt everything on the battlefield, which is pretty nuts. So if it's melting aluminum alloys, then, think about what that would do to the body. It'd be long gone, all right? And then, of course, China spreading its wings once again. But look at this. China deploys the J-10 fighters to Egypt as they do air combat exercises between Egypt and China. And this is a little bit concerning. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about some of the other stuff that's going on in that immediate area when it comes to China. But the fact that they are conducting an exercise with Egypt in an area that we have a ton of U.S. military assets in is absolutely concerning. All right. Back over to the Chinese side of the house in the Asian Pacific region. The U.S. Marine Corps anti-ship missile deployment to highly strategic Luzon Strait is unprecedented. This is down towards the Philippines. I get down here on the map, but check this out. It says that they're deploying this into the heart of one of the world's most strategic, intense bodies of water, which is the Luzon Strait. It will be the closest to Chinese mainland that U.S. land-based cruise missiles have ever been deployed. So it says here that that strait sits between Taiwan and the Philippines and is roughly 220 miles across at its narrowest path. I'll give you an idea where that's located, right? So this is Taiwan right here, right? Philippines down here, but this is the spot, right? Okay, now we start talking about shared adversity as the Philippines and the U.S. launch a joint military exercise. Now, this is saying as many as 17,000 personnel are expected to take part in this annual Balakatan, which means shoulder-to-shoulder drills, which is the first time this will be include integrated air and missile defense simulation. So, yeah, we are basically doing just what they are. Saber rattling. There we go. Scratch that. Reverse it. All right. Now, we talk about what's going on with these tariffs and everything else, and we have gone into some of the details previously, but I would just want to give us another look because what you are starting to see and what I'm starting to notice is that the amount of parked cargo ships right now is getting very, very high in number. For example, Shanghai is the biggest port. And as we kind of get into this area, all right, you'll notice, you can see them parked here, dropping down. It just gets busier. They pull them kind of out of the way, right? But just look at the quantity of parked ships off of China. And it's actually even further out here. Thousands upon thousands of parked cargo ships just sitting, right? You get up here, same thing, all the way around the horn here, right? And what that tells you basically is their supply chain is coming to a screeching halt. So we're going to see who blinks first. Does this trigger war? Maybe. You go back to Japan, you look at history. Do we repeat history? Because when we basically embargoed oil and sanctioned Japan, what did they do? They attacked Pearl Harbor, right? So eyes on it. Okay, over to Dover. We'll just show you some of the big movers. You got one, Coletta coming in from Chicago to Dover. And then we looked, that one's headed to Ramstein. So I showed you the amount of flights that were headed across the drink. Quite a bit, right? Especially over a 5-day period. But let's continue on. You'll notice the camber flights. Notice where they're all coming out of. Saudi, Bahrain, coming out of the Middle East. Right here, you've got one looks to be coming from Gibraltar, that area, and then Ramstein, Frankfurt. All right, so camber flight's pretty active today. Moving on, then we got the Brits. That's just cycled through, but they were also pretty heavy down into the Middle East. But now we've got them, you'll notice that's into India. And that's it. Yeah, I've got the other one up here towards their home country. All right. Let's look at Okinawa. All right. Let's get into the air base there, which has been pretty active. Now, of course, we have an exercise going on with Japan that would probably be the reason why we're seeing a bit of an uptick on the board here. But you'll notice you've got some Atlas Air troop carriers coming in. That's 767-300. More than likely, those are troops. Navy Logistics. And let me see if we got anything else catches my eye. Headed it back up to Anchorage from there. But this is, again, in and out of Kadena Air Base in Okinawa. And most of the exercises, or at least most of what we're going to be watching, will be up in this area in Japan, just a little bit north of Okinawa. And check this. This is the first time since actually the Vietnam War, which is kind of crazy when you think about this. But these are out of Dice Air Force Base. But we've got U.S. deploying B-1 bombers to Japan for military drills. So you see it. We got stuff down into the Philippines, which is the first time in a very long time as well, with the Marine Corps. And then, of course, you've got this. So we're actually getting a lot of first times out here in a very long time. So we'll keep eyes on this, but it looks like we've got some B-1 bombers that are out there. I'm sure we've got other things too in the region. They do mention the B-2 down here in terms of bombers, but let's move on over to this. Let's talk Europe and Ramstein. And you just notice what's coming in. 747s from Dover. some Airbus from Turkey, right? And then you've got another Airbus coming in from Baltimore. These Airbuses are absolutely going to be troop movers, not a cargo aircraft. 767, it's a little wide body, but again, probably a troop mover coming out of Kuwait. And then notice too, you've got a spar that departs headed to Terceira Island. It's going to be probably a fuel stop. Another spar headed to Stuttgart. So you've got two blue and white dignitaries. You have another camber flight departing Airbus and two more camber flights down here, leaving back to Turkey and other to Baltimore, Washington. So pretty active. And then, of course, we've got a couple C-17s departing. All right. This may be why we're seeing some of the shift and the change. But look at this. This, I think, is very telling. The U.S. to give up on Ukraine, basically the Ukrainian-Russian peace, if a deal is not doable within days. So Trump is basically saying, yeah, we're done. We're not going to go in and try to get this. You got both sides continuing to fight each other. And it just, nobody is letting up. And NATO, everything that we have been showing you is headed to war. That, I do believe, is why we're not able to achieve peace, because you got too many people that want to go to war. And I think Russia knows that. And the reason Russia's not taking the bait and saying, okay, yeah, we'll stand down and go to peace with Ukraine is because they know NATO's intentions. So I don't think we're going to get to peace here. I think we're going to get to war, honestly, in the direction this is headed. So, but you start talking about killing it within days and not weeks. That means that the NATO is going to have to step up to basically give Ukraine what they need to fight, or they're going to have to get into the fight. All right. RZE Poland. Now, the big takeaway here is I just want to show you who's been arriving on the boards, okay? So you kind of go down through this, and you start to notice you have, well, let me see. This is Ukrainian Air Enterprise. So I don't know. I think maybe that is what Zelensky flies on, or his folks. But this is the Belgian Air Force, German Air Force, the Swedish Armed Forces, German Air Force. You see the trend here? How many folks are coming in to this location? The Brits right here are departing. They're on ground as well. All right. It's all the NATO folks. Why are they there? All right. What is going on? Why are they all at the forward operating base? All right. Russia resumes attacks on Ukraine after the Easter truce. Basically, it didn't really last very long. It says Russia launched a wave of aerial attacks at Ukraine on Monday in an abrupt end to a fragile 30-hour Easter truce between the two sides. Yeah, 30-hour truce. Telling you, these guys are headed to war. And Russia's, they know what NATO's intentions are, I'm sure. So we'll keep eyes on that. And then look at this one. With eyes on Iran, U.S. sends more bunker-busting bombs to Israel. 9 U.S. transport planes carrying bunker-buster bombs and other defensive weapons landed near Tel Aviv in central Israel. And that one of them including was, you got their THAAD air defense systems as well. So in anticipation of a possible joint U.S.-Israeli strike, should nuclear negotiations between Washington and Tehran fail. Bunker busters. Yeah, what are those used for? Do you think they're hitting it in Gaza? Probably not. If I was a bet man, those bunker buster bombs that just got handed over to Israel are in preparation for an Iranian strike. Okay? Okay. The Houthis claim attacks on 2 U.S. aircraft carrier groups off of Yemen. And so they're claiming responsibility for the attacks on 2 U.S. aircraft carrier groups currently patrolling the Red Sea and areas off Yemen's coast on Monday. So did it really happen? Well, I don't see anything confirming it. But this is, again, it just goes to show you that you can't fix stupid. I don't think do they realize who they're going up against here? I don't know. All right. Chinese satellite imagery firm is helping the Yemeni Houthis target U.S. ships. Again, China's starting to step up, and rattle a little bit of their sabers. So where this is all going, it's getting interesting. The fact that China is just to the north of the Red Sea with fighter aircraft, working with Egypt is very concerning. But it doesn't just stop here. You're wondering, where are they getting all their information and who is behind it? So this tells you that the Chinese are helping the Houthis. But then you go over here to this headline, right? And look at this. It says an Iranian long-range VHF 3D early warning radar has been spotted north of the port of Sudan, right? That's positioned right along the Red Sea. So you've got them with the early warning radar. You've got satellite imagery being fed to them. This is how we are getting simply caught up in the mix of all of this in the Red Sea, and why the Houthis are able to pop things off with some level of success. So, okay. Well, listen, that right there is going to do it for our Sitrep today. I hope you have a blessed rest of the day. Stay frosty, keep that powder dry, folks, because this is getting very interesting. Things are moving rapidly, and it does seem that a war is going to pop off. There's no two ways about it. Now, how long until that takes place, I don't know, but man, it seems like everybody's on a hair trigger. So eyes on it. Guys, be safe. We'll talk soon. God bless. Monkey out.